Good day and welcome to the third episode of Interfaith Forum. I am your host, Bashir Mundi, and we shall be continuing our discussion on the textual and historical basis for interfaith dialogue from the Muslim perspective as well as the Christian perspective. And as usual, with me today are Malam Nuruddin Lemu of the Islamic Education Trust. Malam Nuruddin, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And his friend and brother, Reverend Father George Ehusani of the Luke's Terra Leadership Foundation. Father George, you are most welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
And so viewers, we will continue from where we stopped last time with the questions we were asking these two gentlemen concerning the textual basis and historical basis for interfaith dialogue. The Jews before them and then the Muslims after them have had to in some way dialogue with each other, cooperate, collaborate. They have had conflicts and so on. You mentioned the 13th century, which was a very fascinating period, an interesting period in history. From the Muslim point of view, or from the Muslim historical precedents, what would you have to add, Malam Nuruddin, in terms of the the examples from history, from the Muslim perspective on this?
I think Muslims have always known the very clear instruction in the Quran, La ikraha fi din. This is in Quran chapter 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 256, which means there is no compulsion in religion. That a Muslim under no circumstance can force a non-Muslim to accept Islam. The implication of that for even political warfares was even when Muslims conquered a particular territory for whatever reason, it was clear that you had to respect the rights of the people there to practice their religion. So whatever political differences you might have had, whatever economic differences you might have had, whatever ethnic problems were there, you cannot disrespect people on account of their religion. They must have their political freedoms to practice their religion and live their lives according to their own laws. And so as my brother mentioned, looking at the Middle East, both from the Egyptian side where you've had the Coptics, to the Persian side of the Iranian area where you've got Zoroastrians until today, Jewish communities still living in these areas with synagogues that have predated Islam and temples, monasteries and churches. I think as Father George mentioned, the existence of these places are the evidence that dialogue was necessary to ensure the safety, the protection of religious communities and their places of worship. We find also dialogues producing not just treaties that gave mutual respect to each community, which were also unique to various communities, but that beyond just dialogue, Islam also has allowed, based on the Quran in Surah Al-Ma'idah chapter 5 verse 5, that a Muslim can even initiate marriage with a Jewish lady or a Christian lady. And the point I'm making here is that the difference of faith does not prevent a Muslim from showing the greatest level of love and affection to a Christian, in spite of the difference of faith. In other words, your faith is respected and is not an obstacle to greater interfaith relations, greater interfaith harmony. So we found throughout Islamic history, from the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the city of Medina was a pluralistic society. You had Jews living there, you had some pagans living there, you had some Christians living there, right until his death and during the period of the early caliphate. So I think our religious histories are rich of the kind of positive outcome that interfaith dialogues had in ensuring political motives did not trample on religious rights of various people.
Now, would you say, and let me just throw this in, that comes as the two of you are responding, that the norm, you know, is dialogue a sort of, interfaith dialogue a sort of intervention to normalize a normative relationship of conflict between the religions, or is the norm the peaceful relationship, and does dialogue enhance or promote that, or does it come to intervene when there is conflict and tension that disturbs, that perturbs that peace? What is the norm from the Christian perspective?
It's a very critical question and a very good question at the beginning of our interventions and the series that we're going to be doing. There's what we call the dialogue of life, that people need to carry on life in a plural society. So I need to discuss with Nuru and with other Muslim friends of mine about the issues of justice in this country, about the unemployment in this country, and see how we can put heads together to do something about it and get the best from my Christian tradition and they get the best from the Muslim tradition to work together towards the betterment of our society, even when there is no conflict of any kind. That is called a dialogue of life. So people are, a Muslim person wants to marry a Christian person, and then we work out the modalities for the marriage. That's dialogue of life. There's no conflict. So there is a particular kind of dialogue which is more like conflict management when there is conflict. For example, the present kind of scenario in the country with Boko Haram and other crises. So it's another dimension of dialogue. This time we are coming together to understand the various textual bases perhaps for some of the misunderstandings and conflicts and say, how could we resolve this and get by? But beyond that, even when everything is peaceful, because it's a plural society, we need to negotiate, we need to interact. There needs to be dialogue, sharing, discussing our various differences for better understanding. When that continues to go on, it will reduce the incidence of conflict in the future.
If I may add to that,
yes.
There's actually an interesting verse in the Quran in Surah Al-Ma'idah chapter 5, verse 48 to 49, where Allah says, "And to every one of you, human beings, have we given," it says, "shir'atan wa minhajan," your own sharia, your own law, and your own way of life. And the verse continues that had God willed, He would have made all mankind one community. But He willed it otherwise, that He will test you with what He has revealed unto you. So vie or compete with one another in the doing of good. Unto God is your final return, and He will make clear to you all those things on which you differed. What this verse says is there's religious diversity. We have differences which we have to respect. We have things in common, which is the doing of good. And so it becomes imperative for us to recognize that there are some things where at the end we leave to God. But there are also those things which we all agree with. And as my brother mentioned, we live in a country with so many problems. I mean, you can remove Boko Haram today. It doesn't mean we've got our problem solved. We've had problems before Boko Haram. We've got a lot of problems to do with injustice, issues surrounding the ideas around citizenship and who's an indigene and not, and whether that should matter in Nigeria, problems to do with education, healthcare, security, poverty. We have so many areas that pinch all of us as human beings. And in the spirit of loving for the other, what you love for yourself, do unto the other what you would want done to you, and not doing unto others what you would want, what you would not want done to you, it becomes imperative for all people of faith to look for those common problems and try and see how a synergy, a cooperation, could help them more effectively solve these problems. But beyond just solving problems, to look at how we can enhance better mutual understanding and a more prosperous country based on the motivation we all get from our respective faiths.
And you know that from our respective faiths, we have a lot of motivation for good behavior, for justice, for compassion, for fellow feeling. So actually, if we lived the best of our religion from point of view of moral and ethical values, we would have a better country than we have today. So it means coming together to say, look, bring out the best resources from your religion to teach your people. And I bring out the best resources from my religion. Then where you now have the synergy coming from all that, we'll be able to produce a better society than we have today.
Now, when you speak about, and these are all very excellent perspectives, bringing out the best from your religion, from Christianity, or the best from Islam, of course, I was telling a friend that I, was coming to moderate a program on interfaith dialogue, and he said, well, should I suggest for you an atheist, to, throw an atheist into the mix for some balance? And that really got me thinking. Now, this is you both did a very laudable thing in convening this interfaith action for peace. But all of these things we're talking about, of tolerance, of listening to the other, is it just for Muslims and Christians, or is it something that, does Islam promote that you should tolerate or try to understand someone, not just interfaith, someone of the other faith, but someone of no faith, as some people might describe themselves? I'll give each of you an opportunity to say something.
Well,
on
from a Christian point of view,
yes,
the respect you should give a human being, you give a human being because it's a human being, because we call a child of God, created in the image and likeness of God, with a supernatural origin and a supernatural end. So that respect is due for everyone, whether he or she claims to have a faith or not. From that point of view, every human being deserves respect, dignity, sanctity of life, and so on and so forth.
Beautiful, beautiful. Do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I would say from the Quran in chapter 60, Surah Al-Mumtahina, if I'm not mistaken, verse 8 says that God has not forbidden you. In another translation, God actually requires you regarding people, irrespective of their faith, who have not fought you on account of your faith, who have not driven you out of your homes. God requires you to deal with them with goodness and with fairness. All human beings, just by being children of Adam, I mean even creatures, deserve goodness from us, deserve good treatment. How we handle cases to do with justice, of course, we'll discuss that in more detail. However, all faith consider that even when you can do justice, forgiveness and love for the other is a higher virtue than wanting retaliation, even if it's equitable and just. Also, regarding the question of atheists and people who come from various backgrounds, in Surah Al-Hujurat, chapter 49, verse 13, Allah in the Quran says, He is talking to all mankind, He has created you from a male and female, has divided you into nations and tribes, and in the Arabic it says, لِتَعَارَفُوا, that you may get to know one another. And so our differences are not things that should create boxes for us, but the differences add variety, and we are expected to learn more about each other. It's good to learn what is the atheist believing and why does he believe what he believes, and vice versa. And the ending of that verse says, Inna akramakum indallahi atkakum, that the most honorable in the eyes of God or in the sight of God is he who is most God conscious. And ultimately God is the best judge for who is most conscious of God. So all our differences, instead of things to put us apart, are actually opportunities for us to learn more about each other, to see the human in the other, and to live as human beings with justice, with love, with goodness in the full sense of the term.
That's very interesting to note. Now, I'd like to ask, in this series, what opportunities abound for our audience in terms of getting more acquainted with, the Islamic perspectives and the Christian perspectives on dialogue and collaboration, and interfaith collaboration. What are some of the things that we should look forward to hearing in these series?
Yes, we shall set out Twitter accounts, Facebook accounts, and which will be interactive. People can post some comments in our Twitter and Facebook accounts, and now and again we'll be able to respond to some of the questions that they will raise there. We hope to, in both the Twitter and the Facebook account, we hope to be able to post some of these references so that some of these programs and the verses of the Quran and Hadith that come out from the scriptures that come out, we hope to then be able to post them for the benefit of our listeners and viewers. And the resources that are generated in the course of this long series, we hope to be able to put out for the wider public.
Okay, and in terms of specific topics or themes, what do our audience stand to benefit from in terms of the variety of themes and topics that we will be discussing in these series?
We hope to discuss things like we've started from the textual basis for dialogue, but we'll be dealing with things like diversities, globalization, and what challenges that brings to bear, interfaith challenges that it brings to bear. We'll be dealing with things like forgiveness. Nuruddin just mentioned the superiority of forgiveness over revenge. We'll be dealing with such topics as the love of all human beings and how that is the kind of thing that can build society. Bring out the best from our religions to touch some of these topics. Then, of course, we will be touching on some of the background issues in our society that predispose us to the present kind of situation. Issues of poverty, issues of joblessness, issues of poor governance. We'll be dealing with that, and part of this program will be some kind of advocacy for better government, for more accountable governance, for better education, for mutual understanding among the people who live in the same country, to understand ourselves. And then what are some of the international, what could be some international influences in our society which people may not be aware of? We will be raising such issues at this kind of forum that we are going to be having.
Yeah. In addition, we would be looking at what I would call prickly topics. Topics that have served, unfortunately, as obstacles to enhancing interfaith relations. So you would find, for example, some Muslims wanting to know more about the idea of crusade. What is a crusade? When a Christian tells you he believes in crusade or holy war, is that something for a Muslim to be worried about? When a Muslim talks about jihad, is that something for a Christian to be worried about? You have Muslims who would want to know, is it allowed for a Christian to enter a mosque? And probably also want to know, is it allowed for a Muslim to enter a church? From the Islamic side, also from the Christian side. When a Christian brings you food, Happy Christmas, is it okay to accept jollof rice and chicken or turkey cooked by a Christian during Christmas? Is it okay for a Muslim to also give some of his meat from Salah or Eid al-Adha to a Christian? So we'll be looking at a range of topics that we hope would be presented from a very classical Islamic background. Of course, we will acknowledge where some scholars may have differences, but to help people understand what exactly does Islam teach on this, and what is it, and distinguish that from some of the popular opinions that really have no basis and have just served as misconceptions and obstacles, in fact, bridge burning issues, unfortunately, in interfaith relations. So we'll be looking at a big selection of
I
these
like
areas.
that. Bridge burning issues as opposed to more positive bridge
Bridge
building.
building issues,
So we
yes.
don't we want to stop burning bridges, but rather building bridges.
We
and
shall be
extending hands.
identifying the issues that burn bridges,
Bridges.
and here we shall be trying to build bridges.
So this is really a promotion of more constructive dialogue, and which brings me, when we're talking about constructive dialogue and construction and building, if you can mention one or two of the specific actions, interfaith action for peace. Now, this is, of course, an action, just enlightening people and changing paradigms and so on. But, any interfaith initiatives for some concrete, practical, practicable actions that will have some real impact on the ground for the common person.
Yes, one concrete action that we could engage in, and a few people already engage in, as far back as 10 years ago when Nuru and I were at a conference, we discussed concrete issues of promoting justice, setting up an orphanage together, Christians and Muslims. So a Christian group in Abuja and a Muslim group in Abuja come together to set up an orphanage and run an orphanage. That's one kind of case that we can do. It brings those who are in the board, in the management board, constantly brings them together to discuss the progress of this orphanage. That will be one kind of case. A Christian group and a Muslim group can run a soup kitchen in an environment around the city where there are so many poor people and who are looking for food. Christians and Muslims can decide to have a joint soup kitchen. Now, all those who are in the management of that soup kitchen will be coming together to constantly discuss how to run this soup kitchen. Then we do have already happening, we do have in several places dialogue groups that between Muslims and Christians. In Abuja, I am aware of the head of the Abuja Mosque and the Archbishop of Abuja coming together to form a forum where they visit one another and so on. We would like to promote many such.
Excellent.
As concrete actions for dialogue.
It will really be, a great relief and a new thing really for many to actually see Muslims and Christians coming together and doing something that's productive, that's constructive, that positively impacts.
That's cool.
Well, our viewers, I hope that you really enjoyed this session of this discussion that these two gentlemen have engaged in. I hope that your views have been broadened. I hope that some misunderstandings and misconceptions have been cleared with regards to issues of dialogue between faiths, as well as collaboration and synergy in bringing something positive to people, clearing their minds and understanding, as well as feeding the hungry and pursuing and promoting causes of justice. We really want to thank you for your time, and we want to thank our discussants, Reverend Father George Ehusani, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Malam Nuruddin Lemu, thank you very much for this very interesting discussion.
Thank you very much.
So viewers, here we are, and I hope we're having more viewers even than before, and by next episode we will, and as I say all the time, and we say all the time, and we want you to say all the time, I am your host, Bashir Mundi, telling you once again, keep the faith and keep the peace.